Today, joining me is Marissa Streit, the CEO of PragerU. Hi, Marissa. Thanks so much for joining.
Hi, thanks for having me on.
I wanted to ask you first about the assassination of Charlie Kirk. I personally have never had the experience of feeling grief or heartbreak over a public figure that I never met personally. And I think a lot of people feel that way in the conservative movement who followed his career and his content. But what has it been like, the last week or so since that event?
So, for me, obviously, personally, it's a great loss. PragerU and Turning Point started around the same time. Charlie used to call Turning Point the boots on the ground and PragerU the Air Force. And when we both still had collagen in our cheeks, we would run around talking about our big dreams to really protect our country. I last saw Charlie when we were visiting Dennis Prager at the hospital after Dennis Prager fell, and it was an incredibly emotional moment. I think about that all the time because I regret not taking pictures. You see, we always think that we're going to have a chance to take pictures of people that we love because we're going to see them again, and maybe we don't look that great at the hospital, and so we skip taking pictures. And for those who are listening, I think that Charlie's death should also remind us that we just don't know what tomorrow is going to look like. What are the chances that Dennis Prager would outlive Charlie Kirk? Dennis and I were talking about that. We never thought that Charlie would go first at only 31 years old. With that said, I would say that while Charlie lived a very short life, a way too short life, in our opinion, of course, he lived a very big life. His life was not small. So every day was maximized doing the things that mattered to him the most. And I think it also gives perspective because we forget sometimes that it's possible that our days are numbered. And Charlie Kirk lived as if he knew that his days were numbered. And that was really that special thing that I think Charlie brought to our movement, is that he was so focused on what mattered. It's why he loved Dennis Prager so much. He would call Dennis Prager a moral giant because he cared so much about morality. Charlie was one of the busiest people I know, and he still found time to fly to visit Dennis at whatever hospital Dennis was at. No matter how far it was, he found a way to do it because he was so focused on morality. The absurdity that people call Charlie Kirk all kinds of names, while knowing Charlie, what kind of a moral giant he himself was, is heartbreaking. And this really ties into your question. Why do Americans, and frankly people all over the world, feel like they lost a loved one, feel like they lost somebody who they knew? And I think it's because Charlie Kirk really embodied what it was that we hoped America could and should be. He was this young man with a beautiful wife and beautiful children who focused on God and country and dedicated every single day of his life to do so. And Charlie made everybody feel like they're his best friends. I mean, you see people all over the internet claiming Charlie. And that is because Charlie had that ability to do so. He would always return a text message. He would always give a hug. He would always make you feel close. And even if you didn't know him, when he would speak to you through his show or through his tweets, he would make you feel like you are close to him. He had that very special gift. And so when Charlie Kirk was assassinated, every one of us, both people who know him and don't know him, feel like we lost a little bit of that hope of what America should and could be. And I don't think it's lost. I actually think that maybe the first moment we had that incredible feeling of despair that we lost a friend and somebody who brings us hope. But then right the following day, we saw a movement grow more than we ever anticipated. So that's those are some of my thoughts on the loss of my great friend.
Yeah. And what has been your reaction to seeing, there obviously been some really disgusting reactions on the left to his passing, but also an effort to cancel and highlight people who have done this publicly. And some people are calling it right-wing cancel culture. What's your feeling about that instance?
Yeah, you see the true nature of man during hard times, right? And so you were really all the vile, disgusting people are coming out of the woodworks, and hopefully people are paying attention. I chatted with the superintendent of education in Oklahoma. Oklahoma is a state that voted for Donald Trump 3 times in a row. There is as right-wing as it gets. I think your audience would probably agree with me. And what Superintendent Ryan Wolters told me was that over 70 teachers have been suspended from teaching in classrooms for saying that essentially Charlie Kirk probably deserved it. And so in a place like Oklahoma, you find 70 teachers that within days of the murder of Charlie Kirk are saying such vile things. It really highlights that we have a cancer in our country. We have a real cancer in our country. And much of that cancer, by the way, is in our educational institutions. Notice that so much of the violence that we are experiencing, whether the school shootings or the murder of Charlie Kirk, have happened in educational institutions, both universities and grade schools. And it just goes to show that this war against Americans, against freedom of speech, against our values, is right here in our backyard, in the most precious place to us as parents, and that's in our educational institutions. Charlie made a video for us many years ago that the least free place in America are the educational institutions. And boy, was he right. The least free places in America, the least safe places in America are the educational institutions. And that's because radical leftists have been pushing a hateful narrative against half of America for so many years.
And Charlie was also a big Israel and supporter and friend of the Jews. There's been a lot made of a retreat that took place in the Hamptons with Bill Ackman that I think Turning Point arranged, and accusations from donors, and that Charlie was put under a lot of pressure by donors. I do know for a fact of a large donor that pulled his funding from Turning Point, I think because Charlie had included Tucker at the AmFest event. But I think this is the larger issue here is support for Israel on the right in American politics. So I wanted to get your take on, is that support eroding? Are Jews, what is the future for Jews in the West?
All right, so let me answer. There are 2 questions here about the retreat and about Jews' role in America. Let me start with the retreat and the alleged Jewish pressure. I've been in the fundraising world for about 15 years now. Charlie and I have worked together on fundraising. To say that there is a donor without an opinion is silly. All donors have an opinion about what they want to give their money to. And guess what? It is their money. They can give their money to what they believe in. I have experienced pressure from Christian donors, from atheist donors, from Jewish donors, from all donors. Charlie and I would talk about it. We would talk about our favorite donors, the ones that pressure us less, and our least favorite donors, who we still appreciate and love, who pressure us more. Obviously, nobody wants to be pressured. I don't want to be pressured, but I have at least enough integrity to admit that it happens. And when they pressure us, we still do what we believe is right to do. We have one audience, and that is the audience of God. And that is what Charlie and I always said. And Charlie and I have been texting throughout the summer because I did hear about donors being frustrated with the platforming of Tucker. And I understand them, and I understand that they're right to want to put their money in organizations that support their values. And Charlie understood that too. And by the way, to say that Charlie couldn't handle pressure from donors is absolute silliness. Okay, this man consulted with the President of the United States. He hung out with the entire cabinet. He built an organization almost single-handedly when he was in his early 20s. He was a father. He had children. He is not a child. Charlie Kirk was not a child. Charlie Kirk can handle pressure. Believe me, he can handle pressure. This idea that we're trying to portray Charlie Kirk as this weak man who can't handle some pressure from donors. I can handle pressure from donors. Am I really? Like, I can handle pressure from donors, and the great Charlie Kirk can't handle pressure from donors? Absolutely silliness. And frankly, it's actually quite demeaning to his character, because Charlie Kirk had a very strong character. Charlie Kirk was also moral and ethical, and here's what he did. He did love Israel, and he did love the Jewish people, and what he wanted to do is unite the right over the disagreements. And by the way, it's okay to disagree. Maybe on the left, it's not okay to disagree because people are intolerant of diverse opinions. But on the right, there's a lot of disagreement. And that's totally fine. It's totally fine to disagree. We do believe in freedom of speech in the First Amendment. And so what Charlie tried to do is actually organize a gathering. He himself invited people to this gathering, right? It was Charlie who organized this gathering at the Hamptons that everybody is so upset about. And he organized this gathering to bring people from both perspectives. He wanted the Jewish people, the Jewish donors, to hear the perspective of non-Jewish young influencers who are taken back by some of the actions and the issues that are happening in Israel. And he wanted to not just be the translator, but he wanted the Jewish people to hear directly, those Jewish donors to hear directly. And so they all came into the room, and Charlie's agenda was to get everybody to talk and maybe even agree to disagree, but ultimately come out with unity. I have received multiple phone calls from influencers who were there, who are telling me that over the last week, they have experienced more pressure from people who are trying to portray that Charlie was about to turn against Israel than they've ever felt, including at that event itself. And so I don't need to go and paraphrase what has happened at that event. I wasn't there. Influencers have already spoken about this. But I asked this one question. Why is it that during this time that we are all grieving about our friend and frankly, hero, maybe even martyr, Charlie Kirk, why is it that we're not talking about the things he wanted us to actually do? The transgender death cult. Why are we not talking about what is happening on campuses? Why are we not talking about getting more united behind conservative ideology? Again, he wanted to unite the Jews and the Israelis and those who are, frankly, maybe critical of what Israelis were doing. He wanted to unite them instead of us doing all that Charlie Kirk wanted. The narcissists out there have turned this into an opportunity to yet again garner a bunch of clicks and a bunch of attention, because that's what they do every time. Is that what a true friend does? Is that really the legacy of Charlie Kirk, that they are calling themselves friends of Charlie Kirk, and then they're using his legacy to divide the right further and to take our attention off the transgender death cult for which he died while speaking on campus? Is that really what Charlie wanted us to do? I would say no.
And the second part of that question, because I think the focus on this event is a microcosm for something that's happening on the right, which is that there's possibly a loss of support for Israel or for Jews on the right. And I wonder if there's it feels to me like we're in the midst of an information war. Some of it is foreign influenced. I don't have proof of this, but I suspect that some of it is foreign influenced. But it does appear that Jews are losing support on the right, especially among younger people. So do you believe that to be true? And if so, what can Jews do to reframe or rebrand themselves in American politics?
Well, first of all, I completely detest multiculturalism. I think the beauty of America is that for my entire life, since I was born here, I would walk around and I would be Marissa the American, not Marissa the Jew. And I'd like to maintain that. I think that this multiculturalism groupthink, that we think that all Jews need to vote as a voting bloc in one direction or another direction, is diabolical, frankly, to me. We are sovereign beings and we should make our own decisions, and we don't need to go with it. We have no loyalties to any party except the loyalty to the party that supports our values and what we believe in as individuals and not as a group. Jews have supported the great American experiment even before the Revolutionary War. I don't know if you know this, but one of the main financiers of the Revolutionary War was Chaim Solomon, a Jewish philanthropist who bankrupted his entire family fortune in order to support the Revolutionary War. You have seen Jews participate and serve and die and bleed in every single one of the American wars throughout our last 250 years of history, from the Civil War all the way through World War II and recent wars. And so this idea that that Jews would ever go against any sort of party or turn on America or feel like Jews are not supported is completely bogus. Frankly, I think it's a Marxist ideology that is trying to divide us. What we should do as Jews is be grateful that we have been born or living in the greatest country on God's green earth, and we should defend her, and we should understand her. We should study the DNA of America. We should understand the Constitution. We should understand the great values that have made America so prosperous and, frankly, so free to all religions, including the Jews. And rather try to change her, we should safeguard her, we should conserve her, which is ultimately why I became a conservative. I became a conservative because I am grateful for this country and I'd like to conserve her. I'd like to not change her. You know, when I met my husband, I didn't want to change him. I wanted him to remain as he is. And when I understood what America is about, I understood that of course, can America continue to improve? Of course, America continues to improve, but I don't want to radically change her. And so what Jews should do, Jews should get behind America. Get behind America. If you get behind the true America that Charlie Kirk and I have gotten behind, then America will remain the freest and safest and most prosperous place for all religions and for all people who live here.
Yeah. Something I'm noticing is, I agree with you on all of that, by the way, but something I'm noticing is the criticism of, and it's not one monolithic group, the Jews, but there is a lot of pushback and attacking people like Megyn Kelly, who have been friends of the Jews and friends of Israel, and calling her out, accusing her of being a Qatari, like a paid-for Qatari agent. I know that Charlie, I just been watching a clip from yesterday. He complained about this also, but as you mentioned, this is like normal donor stuff. But I see an issue less so with conservative Jews, but rather than embodying and projecting strength, I advocate personally for Jews to own guns, like every other American. I think Jews should own guns. But there seems to be a branding issue in the way that some Jews are attacking people that are not, completely in lockstep with their worldview, and it's having negative repercussions in the, certainly in the conservative side.
There has been a terrible cheapening of the term anti-Semitism and Jew hatred, and attacking people like Charlie Kirk or Megyn Kelly or Matt Walsh and many of our other friends for not standing lockstep in every single thing that either certain Jews or certain pro-Israel lobbies or certain pro-Israel supporters want these folks to say. Calling them anti-Semites is terrible, and it backfires. Like, let me give you an example. That's what happened with Black Lives Matter. Black Lives Matter, which is akin to the Jewish version of the Anti-Defamation League. Let me just say that they're basically the same thing. They prey on the fears and historical trauma that groups have, and they use it in order to get more political attention and more fundraising, frankly. And so when you start labeling everybody a racist, nobody pays attention to the word racist anymore. And when you start labeling people like Charlie Kirk and Megyn Kelly an anti-Semite, then they will stop paying attention to the term anti-Semitism anymore. And that's what they have done. The left has been cheapening these very important words and very important terms for many, many years. And now it is backfiring us. But again, let me remind you that not all Jews have been doing that. Dennis Prager has been speaking against it for years. Ben Shapiro has been speaking against the cheapening of the term Jew hatred and anti-Semitism for years. And believe me, I would love to be able to say that certain Jews on our side are not Jewish. But you don't get to do that, right? And so sadly, what happens is we have to drag them around like luggage And let me just say it. Let me just be honest. Rabbi Shmuley Boteach. Rabbi Shmuley Boteach creates more problems for the Jews than helps the Jews because he himself, in my opinion, is a narcissist. And I don't like to disparage people in public, and I've never mentioned his name until this moment. But this is one of these moments where we as Jews also need to be careful about who we are uplifting and platforming and representing us, because when they cheapen this term Jewish hatred or anti-Semitism, they cause us big problems. And with that said, for those of you who are not Jewish, again, I want to remind you that just like not all people of color are members of the Black Lives Matter movement, not all Jews are part of the Anti-Defamation League and the movement to call everything anti-Semitic. And this is why I love this country, the United States of America, so much, because we are all Americans. We are not Jew first, or this color first, or this Latinx or melanin first. We're none of these things first. We are American first. We are America first, and we have to maintain that. Enough with this chopped fruit salad and multiculturalism, and let's go back to e pluribus unum. From many one, we are Americans, and we will have diverse opinions, but to start attacking people and calling them all kinds of names and terms simply cheapens the terms. And as you said, it frustrates people. It gets very frustrated. You want to turn somebody into a racist, constantly call them a racist. Eventually they'll say, you know what? Screw you. I'm gonna believe you. Maybe I am a racist. And words can be very, very dangerous, and we need to be very, very careful with that.
Yeah, I remember seeing Rabbi Shmuley on, I think Piers Morgan platformed him initially, and I just thought, what an absurd character this is. But the motivation is to get views and cause conflict, and
again, there are plenty of people who are narcissists who will use these big cultural moments to draw attention to themselves, and they exist on both sides. On all sides. And Dennis Prager would say there are only two races: the decent and the indecent. And usually the indecent will try to divide the decent. That's it. At the end of the day, that's the whole story.
Yeah. Marissa, on this subject of influencers and kind of figures, Jewish figures in American life, like I hate saying things like that, but I've noticed since October 7th, they're all different stripes, but people like Michael Rappaport and Dave Portnoy, who I don't think are great representatives or spokespeople. But is there a Jew in American life who is universally liked?
Well, I'd hope it's Dennis Prager. I mean, I'm probably biased given how close I am with Dennis Prager.
Maybe Dennis, but I'm thinking more of like, who is the Matthew McConaughey of the Jews that is relatable to everybody, and everyone is like, oh yeah, he's cool, and I can relate to him. I don't feel like there is one. It's either the Ben Shapiro, Mark Levin side, or these liberal Jews.
Yeah, it's funny that you say that, because a Christian would answer, and I think it makes a lot of sense, that we're all flesh and we're all flawed. And even Dennis Prager, who I adore and admire, he'll have his flaws. He eats way too many peanut M&Ms, and sometimes makes it very difficult for me to get him to focus. And so no human is perfect. And I don't think we can hang on to any one individual, because that's a lot of pressure on them and a lot of pressure on us. A Christian would say that that's why there is Jesus Christ. He's the only human at that time who they saw and perceived as perfect. And after that, there was nobody else who was perfect. You might not believe in Jesus Christ, but you would believe in the same concept that we're all flesh and we're all sinful and nobody is perfect. And people relate to different people, right? So I don't really relate to folks from Hollywood. That I wouldn't say, okay, let's all follow that Jewish person from Hollywood because we like everything they said. But I would feel the same way about authors and sports figures and athletes, etc., or politicians, even more so. I think we all need to strive to be what it is that we believe is moral and good and do the right thing. And at this time in our lives, with what we're seeing, we all could use a bit more courage. I think we're at a war of ideas. Clearly, this anxiety that we're all feeling right now is a war. It's a spiritual war, and in many ways, it's a very physical war. The war became very physical for us, and so we just need a dose of courage. But I don't think there's one individual that we could point at and say, "Oh, that person's our Messiah." The second coming or the first coming hasn't come yet, and I think it's unfair to put that kind of pressure on any individual.
Yeah, I think I was thinking more along the lines of just someone who's cool, quote unquote.
I'm cool.
You're cool.
I don't know.
Yeah, I've just noticed like what we kind of mentioned before is just a lot of Jews like screaming anti-Semitism, asking people to like them, and sort of finger wagging and tattletaling, and from a position of weakness and victimhood. And it just disgusts me. So I'm much more in the camp of just projecting strength.
Let me tell you one more thing about what is the screaming that we're seeing on social media and the anxiety that it brings to all of us. Just a reminder that as humans, we have evolved to pay attention to what scares us the most, right? And so if suddenly something drops on the corner of my office, my eyes will immediately go there because we have evolved to detect potential danger, right? And we have to pay attention to danger. Now, take that basic evolutionary trait of ours and apply that to social media. We have evolved to pay attention to every clip, every statement, every tweet, every post that scares us. And we click on those. And the algorithm feeds on that exact fear that we have as humans. It may not be purposeful. It may just be because our own evolutionary behavior is to click on the things that scare us the most. What is the last time this past week that you clicked on things that bring you joy and happiness on social media? Probably less than the things that bring you fear. And it is because of our biological instinct. And so we're actually propagating through our fear and our anxiety, we are propagating the messages that scare us the most. We're not propagating the messages that make us happiest. And social media and social media creators know this, which is why they oftentimes say the most outrageous things. The more outrageous the thing they say, the higher the likelihood the algorithm will actually develop in their advantage. And the people who are actually helping them do that are the people who are most outraged and scared about what it is that they're posting.
Yeah, that makes sense. On the same subject, regarding social media and kind of the new media landscape, where basically traditional media or legacy media is worthless. And in my opinion, it's just basically over. And then the void has been filled in. I mean, basically you have to read Twitter and kind of crowdsource information and opinion. And it is brilliant. You have access to these direct access to incredible minds. So I'm grateful for that, not having to rely on two opinion columnists from the Washington Post or like Thomas Friedman or something absurd like that. But at the same time, now you have influencers. Some are anonymous. Some are based in India, are not even Americans and are just clickbaiting. Some are paid propagandists by foreign nations. So what is the role, even the idea of an influencer, period? And I know PragerU, I was hoping you could explain like how this folds into PragerU, but the idea that someone is an influencer and we don't have transparency on who is paying them. How do you view this kind of new media landscape, and how should influencers be viewed?
We have to be more responsible about what we consume. I think that more and more and more people are waking up, realizing that they can't just rely on people that they love or think have been right about 70% of things, and therefore they're maybe right about 100% of things. I mean, you have to look at everything with some discernment. And, you know, we have raised a generation that doesn't want to have discernment. We raised a generation that just wants to rely on experts. We saw that during the lockdowns and COVID, and you know, the expert told you this, the expert told you that, and so people have moved now to social media, and in some ways they still have that same behavior, right? I love this influencer, I love this person, I'm going to follow everything they're going to have to say, and everything they say is going to be you know, exactly the truth, and I should rely on it. And it's not the case, right? I think the reason why we have here at PragerU multiple influencers is to remind people that they need to have discernment. And the job of the influencers at PragerU is actually to uplift the voices of others. And so this is why every single one of our 5-minute videos is presented by a different person, so people can hear the great scholars that we have assembled. And I say this to everybody: you should question everything, and question what I say, question what our influencers say. You should not be sheep. And I'd say the silver lining in this mess, because it's only going to get worse now with AI and social media, and we've been warning against this for a very long time. People you don't know are suddenly going to become your influencers. They may even be in Pakistan or India or China or Qatar or Iran, and so, you know, you've been following them for months thinking that everything they say is correct, and suddenly it's incorrect. And it's going to get worse, because you're going to start seeing images of people you do know, and the videos are going to be manipulated using their likeness. I know the government is trying to deal with that, but technology can do all kinds of things, and people are going to start getting manipulated on news. And so here's what we do. We are just reminded there is one God and there's one truth. And there's one thing that is most important to us, and that is we need to spend time with our family, with our loved ones. We need to take a break from politics, right? This is a thing that Charlie Kirk learned. This is why he wrote a book about the Sabbath. This is what Dennis Prager would talk to Charlie about. It can really be a lot, not just on Charlie Kirk and on myself and the team members that work here, but on all of you. It can be a lot on you too. How much can you consume this constant fear mongering that comes from social media? People are going to need to just take a break and focus on what's good, what is true, and what is noble within their lives, and not believe everything and not rely on social media entirely for news, because you can't hold some of these social media influencers accountable. Now, maybe if they're part of an institution, they could get sued for defamation, but a lot of these folks that are on their own, 100% on their own, there's nothing you can do to them if they defame or make things up. They get to be right. I say they get to be correct 70% of the time, and they can be wrong 30% of the time, and nothing happens to them. There's no consequence if you're a lone social media influencer. And so, of course, they can be bought out, but they could also not be bought out. They could just be plainly wrong. They could just get emotional about something and propagate misinformations to millions and millions of people simply because they were wrong. There's no consequence to that. So people just need to be careful. Legacy institutions, I agree, are trash. They're gone. But it doesn't mean that now you take all of that trust that you had in legacy institutions and you just go and park it in social media influencers. Humans are corruptible, both through money and through fame. And people just need to be very, very careful and keep perspective on what actually matters and what's worthy of your attention.
I totally agree. I've actually started doing like a watered down Sabbath of no phone, at least
I
on
love
Saturday.
it. I love
So
it.
it's life changing.
Look, I think the concept of observing the Sabbath, I would say, could start like a buffet. Start with what you're comfortable doing. Maybe it means that you're putting your phone in the drawer, you're lighting candles, or in whatever way you bring God into your heart and into your family, and you just take a few hours to recognize what actually matters to you, and you reflect on your past week. And if you're ready, maybe the following morning you start doing more of it. If you're not ready to do 24 hours in one shot, that's okay. If you're ready to do a light version of the Sabbath, as you said, that's fine too. But I think people are going to need to learn how to calibrate themselves mentally during this very, very challenging time in our lives, where social media is putting so much anxiety and fear, and frankly is so consuming. It's you're inhaling social media and fear from the moment you wake up in the morning to the moment you go to sleep. You have this blessing that is given to you through the good book that tells you you're allowed to take a break from that. You're allowed to put that aside and spend time with the things that actually nourish your soul. You're allowed to spend time developing discernment by putting that away and spending time on reflection, so that you're not completely captured by social media.
Do you think, Marissa, I started something called Liberals for Trump during the election cycle with the hope of, and I have t-shirts made and everything to actually create cognitive dissonance for people, because I think I live in Los Angeles, obviously, but I think it should be okay for anyone to hold different political views. It shouldn't be unacceptable to be a Trump supporter here. So that was my hope, was that I could engage people in conversation and have it just because I come from a liberal background, and that it would just be okay. And I could change maybe not even convince people, but just convince them of acceptability of my views. It's been mostly a failure so far. But do you think can you convince people or convert people? Do you think that's a fool's errand, or it's something that can be done?
Well, if I didn't think that we could convert people, I would be wasting my time here at PragerU. I've spent the last 14 years trying to bring ethical monotheism and common sense to the public, with the idea that people, if they only heard the truth, they would turn around. I think that my liberal friends share more in common with me than what they would with leftists. I think liberals have been told that they should be afraid of being associated with conservatives. And sadly, they have believed the absolute nonsense of the ad hominem attacks that have been placed on people like me and Dennis Prager and Charlie Kirk. These insults that I'm anti-women, that I myself, a white Christian nationalist Barbie anti-Semite. I've been called that. Dennis Prager has been called names. Charlie Kirk has been called names. Charlie Kirk has been called a Nazi by, frankly, Nazis who wanted an excuse to shoot him and kill him. And so I think what liberals have been doing is they have been allowing themselves to be brainwashed and controlled by leftists because of this fear of being labeled associated with the right. What is so bad being on the right? Being pro the Bill of Rights, being pro-America, being a patriot, believing in freedom of speech, believing in our rights to protect ourselves through Second Amendment, believing that children's innocence should be preserved, that a young woman shouldn't be placed in a situation where she can be socked in the face because a man identifies as a woman and decides to grow long hair, by wanting to allow our children to go to school without us being fearful of them being told that they're born in the wrong body and therefore change their gender, and oftentimes resort to castration, chemical and physical surgical castration. What is so bad with being associated with the right? Let me ask you. It's only the nonsense that they make up about us because they can't actually meet us where we are on actual ideas. And so they attack us. So what is the issue with liberals? Frankly, I think liberals share the same values as conservatives do today, except conservatives are willing to fight and liberals are too afraid of being called all kinds of labels. So I encourage your liberal friends to stop being so fearful, because we are at a war of ideas. And if the liberals are known as in history as the ones who ultimately shared the same ideas of modern day conservatives today, but were not willing to fight, then it's on you that our country is going sideways.
Yeah, that all just sounds like common sense to me.
It's common sense. It's common sense. And if you remove the silly ad hominem attacks, from which many people have labeled me with, then you recognize that we're actually on the same page. I've been called anti-women. The right has been called anti-women. Have you noticed that the two largest youth organizations are now run by women? Marissa Streit, a mom of 3, and Erica Kirk, a mom of 2, are the CEOs of the two largest and fastest growing conservative right-wing youth organizations in America. Really? We're anti-women? Come on, wake up already.
Yeah, it's absurd. So Marissa, my last question for you is on the Trump administration so far. I'm personally a little bit alarmed by how some of the appointments are performing. There was the Pam Bondi comment about hate speech, which to me sounds like she either misspoke or she doesn't understand the First Amendment. And there have been complaints about Kash Patel also, but what is your view? What do you think of the Trump administration so far? 8 months in.
So let me start with this. I trust the man, Donald Trump, and it doesn't mean that I have agreed with everything he's done. There are many times that he's done things, and I just like held my head and I said, why are you doing this to us? It's, please don't do it. And he has the ability to see around corners, and he has visibility of things that we don't have visibility of. And so sometimes he'll make decisions that we don't understand. But ultimately, he has had, in general, a proven track record of putting America first and being right about a lot of things. And so is he going to be right about everything? As I said before, no human being is right about everything. Every president is going to make mistakes. But ultimately, I feel more secure living in the United States of America than ever before. Now, maybe you would say President Trump had such small shoes to fill with Joe Biden. Of course, we feel more secure today, just given that at least he put some security. Fair, but we do feel, as Americans, more secure today. I feel less embarrassed to be an American on a geopolitical level because we have a president who actually can show up to a meeting and be present and also project strength. A weak America is a weak world. And I don't think that anybody, whether they agree with what America is doing today or not, on the geopolitical foreign affairs issues, nobody would say that America is coming across weak. And a strong America is a safer world. And so President Trump has delivered on that. He's delivered on an issue that obviously is very close to my heart because I'm in the world of education, parental rights, and cleaning up again, all this madness around this transgender death cult that we are seeing in America. And so he has made that a key issue. And I do think it's a key issue. Maybe some people are diminishing the importance of keeping our kids safe. But to me, it's a very, very significant issue. And it's a significant issue for all parents, I would say, around the country. And then finally, about the economy. I don't know where we're going to be with the economy. I in general was very taken back by the tariffs, but I also understand the issue of the tariffs and the need to negotiate against other countries who are continuing to be bankrolled by us while stabbing us in the back at the same time. And that is not okay. Why should I write you a big, ginormous check and you go turn around and vote against us in the UN or push for policies like the Paris Climate Accord that frankly put the entire West in a national security issue. So things are going to be expensive for a while. It's going to take a while for the economy to recover, but I'm patient because I do believe the president has visibility and has an ability to see around corners. And given that he cares about our country and he is not sold out to other countries, I think ultimately I would give him a high score on that. The rest is, I guess, yet to be determined until he finishes his entire term.
Yep. And then the real last question for you regarding Israel. Why should Americans care about our alliance with Israel? Why is it important? Why are we giving American tax money to Israel? And do you believe there are accusations of, people having dual loyalty to a foreign nation? Like, where do you land on that?
I think that if you had to number how many Americans have passports from other countries, you will find that there are far more Americans that have passports with other countries than people who have passports with Israel. Okay, I guarantee you that. So this idea that you can't hold two passports is frankly silly and not pragmatic. And this idea that Only people who are Jewish, who are have an Israeli passport and an American passport are the bad guys is frankly an anti-Semitic statement. Every time you blame the Jew for something that literally everybody else does, you have to ask yourself, am I being an anti-Semite? Like, why would you single out one group of people that is doing exactly the same thing that everybody else does? So this dual loyalty thing is complete silliness. Why does America want to ally with Israel? And by the way, I hope that America only allies with Israel because it's in the best interest for America, not in Israel's best interest. As an American, I believe that we need to put America first. Why do I think they ally with Israel? Well, we're seeing right now, Israel has become the Iron Dome of the West. They're absorbing all of the jihadist, Marxist hatred first before it comes to our shores here in the United States. It's not to say that it's not going to come to the United States, but notice who's getting all the hate first. The same people who hate Israel are after America. So once they're done attacking Israel, they start attacking the United States of America. And our leaders know that. And so Israel is basically doing our dirty work for us. They're doing the hard work. Who do you think plowed the entire space in Iran for the Americans to go in and show up over there? It's the Israelis. If Israel really wanted to start these wars, you would think that they're crazy because they would just want to murder their own children. It makes no sense. And so here, as Americans, we just need to recognize and frankly be a little grateful for a country that is willing to put their children as soldiers to help defend the West against the very massive jihadist Marxist attack that is happening on all of us.
Marissa, thank you for joining.
Thank you. Thanks for having me on.